Now, one of the things I mentioned last week is that families are terminal. And everybody went into shock, like, are people dying? No. But what happens, if it's done in the normal course, you'll all be in two families, the one that you were raised in and the one that you have, that you create with your spouse. But those come to an end. In fact, I have a family now, and they're old, they're adult children now with their own families, and I'm extended family to them. But before, I want you to see that this too shall pass. You're in a very intense moment in your life of raising your children, getting your careers, but this moment will pass. And what happens after this? Let me show you what happens after this. This is what happens after this. See, I had a motorcycle, well, I had a mini bike when I was a kid, had a motorcycle in college, then I got married, then we got pregnant, and then the motorcycle went away. Gone. And then I waited patiently, about 25, 26, 7 years, and now I'm back. And so this too shall pass, and you'll get your life back and get to do stuff you love, and especially for you guys, because it's quite time-consuming to be a dad and be a mom, and it really captures all your time, and then some. All right. Let me introduce my family. This is back in 1992. Now I want you to count the number of people in my family, all right? So, and the reason I have to have my own picture with my daughter, because there's never any pictures of all of us together because I'm the photographer. So I'm never in there. So, my kids always wonder, well, did you ever come to our vacations? Like, well, I was there, trust me. I was taking the pictures. So there's how many there? 4 kids and 2 adults, right? So there's 6. All right, here we are now. Count how many are there. More than 6, right? And so this is what I mean here. See, we have our children and a son-in-law and a daughter-in-law and 2 grandchildren. So our family's growing. But when we get together as a family, everybody comes together, and when the party's over, everybody leaves. And it's just me and Glow. It's like, well, that was nice. I guess we're all gone now. And that wasn't always the case, all right? But that's where, so you're in a transition period, a life cycle period where you're raising your family, which is exciting, but there's an end to that. And so, as we said last week, the most important thing you can do for your children is to love their mommy or love their daddy. That's the number one thing they need. I asked that question last week, and there were people saying, well, you need to love them, and you need to give them security, and all those things are important. But there's nothing more important than your child knowing that you love their daddy or you love their mommy, because the marriage is the bridge over which children walk into adulthood, okay? And if that bridge is solid, then they're going to be relaxed, at ease, they'll be free to learn and to grow. And if it's not solid, then they start to wonder about that bridge, and they get a lower center of gravity, get on their hands and knees, if you can imagine being on a bridge that's not very secure, and they're going to crawl into adulthood very insecure and uncertain. So that's the number one goal, is for you to have a solid marriage, because that's what's going to carry you through. And when this passes by, and it's just the two of you, got something to reclaim, something solid to reclaim. All right, there's a scripture, Proverbs 22:6, that says, train up a child in the way he should go, even when he is old, he will not depart from it. All right, when you read that, what comes to mind? What does that mean, train up a child in the way that he should go? What do you think that means? To discipline? Okay, if you discipline them correctly, they'll stay on the path. Okay, another one? Yes?
Help them find what their passion or their...
Help them find what their passion is, what their goal is. Another one? Yes? Following the Lord. Okay, so what we have here is, when you do a word study on this, which it really is, train up in a child in the way that he should go according to his bent, or according to his calling, or according to his passion, or according to his giftedness. Now, let me read this to you. in two ways. Train up a child in the way that he should go, and he will not depart from when he's old, okay? That says that you have an idea of the way he should go, so you're going to raise him in that manner. Now let me read it again. Train up a child in the way that he should go. It's a different meaning, isn't it? And so when you think about training a child in the way that he should go, you're going to be on your hands and knees praying, God, help me understand what that is, so I can be able to call out your calling in their life. Your giftedness. You look for their giftedness as opposed to making them like you or like somebody else or the way you think they ought to go. So it's real important to understand that they have a unique personality, and it's our job to discover that personality, to fan it into flame, to encourage it. And if you've had more than one child, you know immediately that they're different. I mean, right out of the chute, they're just different. And not only just male and female different, but they're just different personalities. And you can see it in the first weeks of life. Now, you have a handout, and what we want to do is start to discover this unique personality. And what I'd like you to do is flip to that side, and I want you to, if you have more than one child, choose the child that's giving you the greatest challenge or that you have the most concerns over, or maybe you're confused by them or going, what do we got here? And use that child to do the survey. Now, later on, I encourage you to use the survey to do it on all your children so you can identify them. And basically what you do is there's 4 boxes there, and what you want to do is go through each box and circle the words that describe your child. Okay, and you'll notice that there's probably more circles in 1 or 2 boxes than the other. And then once you're done circling them, then I want you to count the number of circles in each box, and then double that number and put it in the line. Okay, so take a moment to do that. And you might want to write the child's name on the paper so you remember who you did it on. Okay, what you may have noticed while you're taking this survey is that, hey, wait a minute, that's me. I don't know if you started kind of looking at yourself, or hey, that's my husband, or that's my wife, and that's an important thing to know. And you might want to actually do this on yourself as well from a parent's perspective, because you're going to come to the parenting job in a way that fits your personality. And where it gets interesting is when your personality is very different from your child. That's where it gets very interesting in terms of how you do that. And so this might be a very nice tool to see where you guys land, and then you compare where your kids are at. Before we watch a short video clip that really will describe these 4 boxes, let me tell you a story of a physician that came to me for counseling. And he came to me for depression. He was very depressed. And so I did my normal history with him, and in taking his history, he had a great practice, making plenty of money, had a wonderful family, his marriage was good. I'm thinking like, okay, I'm trying to find what's the problem here? Where's the reason for the depression? And as it turns out, he told me that, well, he wasn't that passionate about his work. He did a good job. He was a great physician. He was a surgeon, in fact, and heal people, save people's lives. I was doing something very meaningful. But as it turns out, it wasn't very meaningful to him. And he wasn't passionate about it. I'm thinking, really? You went through medical school, all the internships, and now you've been in practice for 15 years, and this is not what you want to do? No. I said, well, why'd you become a doctor? Where did that come from? He goes, well, my parents wanted a doctor in the family, so I became the doctor. Oh, train up a child in the way that he should go. You're going to be a doctor, aren't you? So I said, well, all right. And this didn't all happen in one session, but over time, I said, well, if time, money was not an issue and you could do whatever you want to do, what would you do? He says, you're going to laugh at me. I go, I'm not going to laugh at you. In my mind, I'm thinking, I hope I don't laugh at him. And I go, so what is it? He goes, nah, I don't. I go, no, come on, you can tell me. I'm a therapist, you can trust me. He says, I want to be a florist. Really? Didn't laugh, but I was surprised. A florist, yes. Because I just love flowers, I love gardening, I love all that. I've always loved that. But it's not very masculine, and it didn't thrill my parents. And He says, but that's what I want to do. I said, so if you were to be a floor, I mean, what does that look like down the road? He goes, well, I'd love to have my own nursery. Wow, okay, that's different. And to make this long story short, what it ended up doing, he started to phase out of his medical career. Now, he was also a smart financial person and had plenty of money set aside so he could launch his new career, but he made a big left turn into a whole new field and was so much happier. Because now he was following God's call on his life and the way that he should go. Okay? So this is the tricky business of parenting, is to find that out, to find out what they're excited about. And sometimes we as parents are as surprised as I was with this doctor. Really? You want to do this? Wow, I would have never imagined. That was never on my radar for you. And this is where we need to really tune in, be in prayer about that, and then begin to try to shape and facilitate that from happening. All right, we're going to watch a short video. John Trent does his great description of these 4 personality types. As you watch this video, I want you to pay attention to, now we're going to focus on this one child that you just identified, and look for the strengths and look for the weaknesses, and put some of those down. On your notes, there's a place to put some strengths and weaknesses for that personality style, okay? So let's watch John Trent.
Circle the highest point of those down in that graph below. Were you highest in the L or the O or the G or the B? So the first thing I'm going to do is just give you an overview of these 4 basic personalities. Now, let me say this is just going to be an introduction. We could go much deeper. We actually do go deeper into the book, but this will give you a general introduction. So we're going to talk about those basic personality bents first, and then what we're going to do is talk about how do you blend those differences into a close-knit team, which is probably even more important. So what are the basic, bents, temperaments that are out there, and then also then how do you blend them into a close-knit team? So now you know where we're going. Let me see, we're a close-knit group here. We've all been through, rained on some trials here. Let me see the hands of you that scored the highest in the L as in Larry category. Let me see, wow, look at this. All right, now we have a little word picture that we use to describe these people, and hold your hands up again. Let me see, all right. Now these are what we call lions. Lions, that's what the L stands for. And let me just give you some general characteristics of lions. Now lions tend to be pretty take charge, pretty decisive kind of people. Pretty go for it. In fact, if you have a child in your home that has a lot of lion, they're basically letting you live at home. Have you noticed that? Because they really run the show. If you're a teacher and you have students that have a lot of lion, okay, guess what? They're running the classroom. They're letting you come to class, but they're running it. We had a dad tell us recently his daughter had just turned 5 years old and was her first day at kindergarten. And does this sound like a little lion? She comes busting in the door and slams down her books on the counter. And she goes, "Daddy, I am never going back to that kindergarten again." And he said, "Well, honey, how come?" He says, "Well, that teacher didn't do one thing I told her to do." Now, that's a lion, somebody that's pretty take charge. Now, here's another characteristic. They tend to be pretty decisive. Is it easy for lions to make decisions? Yes. With or without the facts, who cares? Let's make a decision here. I mean, we're going to make a decision. And not only are they, aggressive and decisive, they also are usually the boss. Any place they're in, they're usually the boss. Or at least they think they are at work. Okay. So those are 3 general characteristics right there. Now, how do lions do when it comes to meaningful communication? Now, sometimes they do good if they're a balanced lion. But for some lions, are they really into chit-chat? No. I mean, what's the point? In fact, we had one guy tell us he had talked to his wife. He goes, I listened to her for about 10 minutes, and then finally I said, "Well, honey, this is a great conversation, but next time we talk, try having a point, okay?" And now you'd have to be a pretty insensitive lion to say that, but that's certainly not the best way to do it. But lions, sometimes they want Reader's Digest version conversations. They don't want War and Peace. Just give me the facts type of a situation. Now, here's another thing. How do lions do when you ask them questions? Do they love to be questioned? No, they like to be obeyed, basically. But really, sometimes what they can do is they can treat questions by other people as direct, affronts to them. Well, hey, why are you challenging me? And someone say, "Hey, I'm not challenging you, I'm just asking for information." But a lot of times lions can interpret questions as somehow some type of disloyalty. So that's some characteristics there. some great strengths. We go all over the country. A lot of the leaders and a lot of great Christian organizations have what? Lion in them, because they are visionary. Do you have to motivate a lion usually? No, you just point them. They're like Peter and Paul in the scriptures. They're already motivated. You just try to direct them because they're already headed in that place. But so all those strengths, what do they need to learn? Well, first of all, here's one of the things they need to learn. And that is that people are more important than projects. People are more important than projects. Sometimes a lion can communicate that the task that they're on is so important that sometimes the people can get overlooked or even sometimes overrun. Have you ever had, for example, someone say to you, well, hey, I'm not attacking you, I'm just attacking your performance, or something like that? Well, you know what? For some people, lions, that's pretty easy for them to do, to separate somebody's performance from their person. But there's other people, they can't separate it. So lions need to realize that. And here's another thing that lions really need to realize, which is really important. That is, it's okay to have some times of relaxation. We know of one guy, lion, and he had his 2-week vacation coming up, and he decided right at the last minute that he would cancel the vacation, and he finished up his little add-on instead, because let's accomplish something, let's do it. Well, did that go over real good at home? No. So that's the type of thing. And the third thing is to increase the communication level. Increase the communication level in the home, because that's so important for a lion, because they know where they're going. They just sometimes don't slow down long enough to explain to everybody else where it is that they're going. So some great characteristics, some great strengths. What's a lion's time frame? Lion's time frame, it's now. Let's do it now. You know, change my diapers now. Take me to the mall now. You know, let's go to eat now. That type of a thing. So they tend to be pretty now-oriented, but they're great people, great leaders, pretty charge ahead. Get a general idea. That's our lion friends. Now let's flip over and look at how many of you scored highest in the O category? Let's see those hands. The O category. Whoa. All right, now wave them around again. Let me see. These are people that we basically call parties waiting to happen. That's right. Now these are our otter friends. These are our otter friends. But not just any otters. These are party otters. Because what's the thing they love to do more than almost anything else? Yak, 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 yak. I mean, they love to talk. They're great networkers. I mean, they're incredible talkers. In fact, they usually come to conferences like this. Why? Do you know? To listen to the messages? No, for the breaks. They really come for the breaks, because then you get to talk to a lot of people. Plus, they get to ride with people and talk with them, yeah, I mean, it's possible. There are otters here today that just saw the cars turning in. They said, hey, a group, that's great, you know, and so they just followed people and came in. So one of the characteristics is they're very verbal. Here's another characteristic of an otter, is they're great networkers. I mean, they know people that know people that know people. They just don't know anybody's name. Have you noticed that? So they know 1,000 people, and they're all their best friends, but it's all, hey, good buddy, how you doing? Hey, sweetheart, but they just don't know your name. Also, another characteristic is they love people so much. When they go to a party or something, how many people do they talk to there? Everybody. I mean, it's not a good party unless they do. In fact, you can usually tell if a person is an otter because they're usually looking past you when you're talking to them. They're usually looking past you to the next interesting person to talk to, is what it really boils down to. Now, here's another characteristic of otters that tends to be pretty consistent, and that is these type of people tend to love having fun. I mean, life basically just has to be fun. They can't do anything. And now I've got a lot of this. Gary has a lot of this. Let me give you a classic example in my home. I can remember it was a Sunday morning, and we were getting our daughter Carrie ready for church. And this was several years ago when she was about 2 years old. And why is it that 2-year-olds can't eat their food unless it's rolled up in balls? Have you ever noticed that? And so I had given her some Total cereal, and she reaches in and gets a whole handful of that glop. It was all, you know, soggy, and she holds it up, milk's running out of her hand, and she looks at me and says, Daddy, what do I do with this? And is that a good question to ask an otter? No. And so I was thinking something fun, and I go, well, honey, put it on your nose. Well, I didn't think she'd really do it, but her eyes get real big, and she goes, poof, like this, and cereal and milk go all down. And so, I mean, I'm out of control laughing. So she reaches in, gets another handful, poof, you know. Well, we go through 2 bowls of total cereal, and then Mom walks in. And Mom is not Cindy is not an otter, you know, so there's brown slime everywhere, the dog's getting sick, you know. And so we have to take her out. Now, we're going to be late to church. Do otters mind being late to places? No, they love it, because then they can meet more people when they walk in, you know, and so they love doing that. But my wife is a different temperament, you'll understand, and she hates being late. So we're out in the backyard hosing her off, and I use a classic otter term. Here's something, if you live with an otter or work with one, you'll hear a lot. You know, she was saying to me, well, John, I mean, why did you do this? I mean, I work with her to try to help her have good manners, and she wiped out the whole kitchen. So I said to her, and this is what you'll hear if you live with an otter, is I go, honey, lighten up. Lighten up, will you? Because anytime things get serious, the otter will usually tend to, make a joke of it, or it's really not that serious, or let's talk about it later, because, so I tell Cindy, hey, lighten up. We were bonding. I mean, this was fun. Well, here's the rest of the story. We go to church, and did get there late, but then afterwards we go to a restaurant, and you can see this coming. And what happened was we were some good friends, thank the Lord, and we all grab hands and bow and look up, and Carrie has her spaghetti, a whole big handful, and she's looking right at me. Their eyes are real big, and she goes poof like this. And so who did my wife accuse of being the 2-year-old? Huh? It was me. So again, what are otters like? They're motivators, they're encouragers, they're fun-loving. I mean, they're enthusiastic. Are they good salespeople? Sure, they love doing that kind of thing. Are they into details? No. What's a detail? That type of a thing. What do they need to learn? Number one, deadlines are not guidelines. Deadlines are not guidelines, because they tend to just do everything right at the last minute. When do otters start their term papers, for example? The night before. They go to the library, and where are all the books? They're all checked out. So they take donuts over to the people's house with the books, have a big party, turn their paper in right on time, make it through school. It's incredible, but that's usually what they do. And it all works out great. So they need to learn that. Another thing they need to learn is maybe sometimes not to be so optimistic that they miss some areas they really need to address. They need to not just say lighten up, but really deal with some tough issues. So that's our otter friends, and we've got a lot of those. All right, now let me see how many of you scored the highest in the G category. G, wow, look at this. Hold them up again. These are our precious golden retrievers. Golden retrievers. Now, what do we mean by golden retrievers? Well, these are the people, when Gary shared the story of Puff, the dead cat. These are the people who always groan. That's why we can't tell any dead cat jokes. Basically, we have some good ones, but golden retrievers tend to be so sensitive and so nurturing, so supportive. We had a couple come in, for example. They'd been married for 28 years. Now, that's more than once around the block. And I remember asking them, I said, well, hey, how long have things been difficult? And they both looked at each other and said in stereo, 28 years. I mean, the entire time things have been rough. Well, we knew before we ever gave them any kind of testing that, at least one of them had to be a golden retriever, because here's a great characteristic for a golden retriever, is they can absorb the most emotional pain and punishment. I mean, they just are so loyal and so supportive and so nurturing. How many of you scored at least 25 or higher in this scale? Let me see your hands. 25 or higher in the G scale. Now, this is what's called the Mother Teresa range. Right there, the Mother Teresa range. And hold your hands up again, because if you have a Girl Scout, hold your hands up again, 25 or more. Because these are the people that you want to, Girl Scouts find these people like crazy, because they'll usually tend to buy 15 to 20 boxes of Girl Scout cookies, because they have a very difficult time saying one word, and what's the word? No. I mean, why say no when you can help somebody? I mean, let's help them. They tend to be great listeners. Remember, let's take the typical Christmas party. Here, give you an idea. Who calls the Christmas party? The lion. He says, we are having a party. I may not be there, but you be there, type of a thing. Now, the otter hears, party, hey, I'll come, great. But do they just come to your Christmas party? No, they go to about 6 in the same night. So, meet everybody. And who do they talk to? Everybody. Now, what about the golden retriever? When they go to a Christmas party, who do they talk to? one person, usually that they drove with, who's usually their grade school friend, you know, that type of a thing. They want to go deep in relationship. See, the average otter knows 8,000 people, but about 1 inch deep, you know. The average golden retriever knows a lot, usually fewer people, but they really want to get deep with them. So if you're living with a golden retriever, guess what? They will strain out on you if you don't get deep with them, because they desire that so much. Well, if they're at that Christmas party, they're either going to talk to somebody they know, or who else might they talk to? They have a radar system that goes, poof, and they get lock on with anybody that's hurting. Anybody that's hurting, they'll, oh, you're not feeling good? You know, that type of a thing. And they tend to just pick up people. The phone rings all the time. I mean, here's a great example. We have a friend, we were in a small group with this one couple, and the wife is off the scale on the golden retriever scale. And she was in the store one day, in the market, and there was a total stranger right in back of her. And this lady strikes up a conversation with our friend, and they begin to talk, and she's pouring out her story, and her husband had just left, and her kids were sick. Well, anyway, she is just tearing up, and by the time she leaves, she ends up paying for this lady's groceries, and then she goes out to the car, and she's weeping uncontrollably because of this terrible story, and she's got the lady's name and is going to pray for her for months, you know. And here's the little teenage son who had stayed out to listen to the radio that was in the car, and mom gets in the car, and she's a basket case. She's weeping and crying. Goes, Mom, what happened? And she tells the whole story, and so, you know, typical otter, he goes, Mom, lighten up, will ya? I mean, this is ridiculous. So if you're way up in the golden retriever scale, then you can sometimes carry the emotional weight of the whole world on your shoulders. You really can. Now let's talk about kids for just a minute. If you have a lion child, what's going to be your big challenge? Discipline. If you don't have a parenting plan, then let me tell you, they will give you a plan. They will set the plan for you. So you've got to have a plan with a lion child. With otter kids, what are they like? Well, they're great kids. They're a lot of fun to have around. It takes them longer to do chores because the chore has to be fun, you know. But one of the things that they're really susceptible more than anybody else usually is peer pressure, because they want to be liked by people so much they can really be susceptible to peer pressure. But what about golden retriever kids? Now, these kids sometimes can be what we call wallflower kids. See, they're so nurturing, they're so supportive, they will mother you if you let them. They will take care of you if you'll let them do that. But they can also carry the whole weight. If there's friction in the home, golden retriever kids try to solve problems, and that can push them into a trait that's called codependency as they grow up, which is they're so supportive of people that they will try to patch up and support problems just to have peace in the home because they want that so badly. So some great characteristics, but as but strengths pushed to an extreme, all that nurturing ability can really get to be a problem if it's pushed way to an extreme. So golden retrievers are great. Now we've got one more group. How many of you scored the highest in the B as in boy category? Let's see. Wow. Okay, let's see those hands again. These are our beaver friends. And these are the kinds of people that actually read instruction books. That's right. Actually read instruction books. Now, does this otter look like the kind of animal that would actually read an instruction book, huh? No. I mean, like take a new computer. I mean, are they going to read the instructions? Forget it. Let's just take it out of the box and I'll find a game in here somewhere. You know, there's got to be some way to start this thing. Now, what does a beaver do? I mean, before they ever even open the box, they want to, make sure that they understand how to use this thing, because here's a key characteristic for a beaver, and that is let's do it right. I mean, let's do it right. If we're going to do it, let's do it right, and by the instructions, and the way we've always done it, because that's a quality job, and that's real important with beavers. Now, let me give you a great example of something happened that kind of illustrates that. Typical otter, I decided one time, and I talked to Cindy, we decided we'd get Carrie a swing set. And so I broke the news to Carrie on a Saturday morning, and I go, well, honey, hey, guess what? I'm going to build a swing set for you. And in fact, you're going to be swinging by lunchtime. Pretty optimistic. Well, the first thing I threw away was what? The instructions. Hey, I have an 80 IQ. I mean, that's walking and chewing gum, 80 IQ. I know I have at least that high of an IQ. So I figured, why do I need instructions? Well, it was lunchtime when I finally finished the swing set, but it was lunchtime about, 4 weeks later, and And here's the problem, and this is, would only happen probably to an otter, is I had never checked. In Arizona, if you don't have a sprinkler system, you don't have grass, if you've ever been out to Arizona. And I was not lazy, but I didn't really want to pour a cement, foundation for those, for the swing set. So what I did is I went out and I got a whole bunch of these big auger stakes. Have you ever seen them? They're big, long stakes, and they have a big screw head, and you screw them into the ground instead of having to pour concrete on the swing set. Well, I screwed these things in, and I finally creatively got the swing set up, and Cindy walked all around it and said, well, I guess it's safe. And so it carries on and just, loving swinging. And so I walk over to the sprinkler box because I thought, hey, this will be funny. I'll flip on the sprinkler while she's swinging and get her all wet while I turn on the sprinkler box. And what have I done with the stakes? Two of the stakes. This is impossible. It's a pretty good sized yard. I drilled right through the sprinkler lines, and water shoots up. Now, would a beaver have ever checked before they screwed those big stakes into the ground where the sprinkler lines were? Sure, because they want to do things right. Now, let me give you another characteristic that's real characteristic of a beaver, and that is they tend to be persistent and hang in there. Have any of you ever been to the Sistine Chapel in Rome? I mean, the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican is absolutely beautiful. Michelangelo laid on his back for 7.5 years painting that. 7.5 years to paint the Sistine Chapel. And it's beautiful. Now, let me ask you a question. How long do you think it would have taken a lion to paint that ceiling, huh? I mean, they'd have got a crew in there and painted that thing in 20 minutes. Let's get this thing out here and go and do another one. Now, what about an otter? Sistine Chapel. Hey, first of all, they'd have forgotten to order the paint on time. And then when it did come, they'd have paint fights. Now let's just do a mural and get out of here. This is no fun, that type of thing. Now, would a golden retriever, would they have finished the Sistine Chapel? No, because every time the workmen showed up, they go, are you doing okay today? How are you? Go ahead and take the day off. Go ahead, take it off. I'm not going to charge you, that type of a thing. Hey, if you want the Sistine Chapel done right, then leave it to beaver. I mean, that is right. Just leave it to beaver. So beavers do things in a quality way. Here's another thing that's a real key characteristic about beavers, is they actually enjoy and look forward to times of quiet. And who do they usually live with? Otters and lions, right? Who don't know the meaning of the word quiet. I mean, they have to have some kind of background noise, lions and otters. I mean, there's got to at least turn on the stereo loud, but beavers actually like times of reflection. And that absolutely drives other people, crazy, some of the other ones. So, what are some of their characteristics? Persistence, diligence, doing things right. They're team players. They're great at follow-through, tremendous at follow-through. Now, if you have a child that has a lot of beaver, how can you tell that? What's one way? Well, just look at their closet. What do they usually do with their shoes? They line them up, they put their clothes all on hangers the right way, that type of a thing. They'll take their socks, for example, and roll them up, same color socks, and they'll roll them up. That's what a beaver will tend to do. What about otters? They usually have sock rooms, they just chuck them. And why is this? I'm going to do a study on this. Otters, it's almost impossible for an otter to actually get the dirty clothes in the dirty clothes basket. Now, they can get close, but not in it, because they're usually behind the back or over the top to get it in. They have to make some kind of game. Now, how do beavers put their dirty clothes in the dirty clothes basket, huh? They fold them, that's right. They fold the dirty clothes and then put it in the dirt. I've never understood that exactly, but that tends to happen. So, now, you can see that, there's some great strengths with each of these different kinds of animals, some great strengths. Lions are pretty decisive and great leaders. Otters tend to be fun-loving and enthusiastic. Golden retrievers are nurturing and supportive. Beavers like to do things right. How many of you know right now, for example, that under your roof, whether it's with roommates or in your home, you've got at least one of each of these animals under the same roof? Let me see your hands. Wow, let's pray for these people right now. No, is life a zoo? Sometimes it is. See, what do we want at home? We really want harmony at home, don't we?
Very interesting, isn't it? How many have, with the child that we were looking at, how many had a lion? How many lions out there? Okay, that's a challenge, isn't it? How about beaver, otter? Got some otters in the family? All right. How about beavers? Okay, a few of those. And golden retrievers? All right, trying to parent you. In my home, our oldest was a lion. I want you to watch this. I'm a lion. What do you think about that mix? Right? The question is, who's in charge? And we had that conversation many times in our home. Our youngest was Otter. He was the family entertainer. He entertained us. I mean, we were laughing, and in the crib he was doing stuff, flipping, and the kids were all around just watching this show. We have one that's a beaver. She was just making sure everything is getting lined up, and then we also had one that was a golden retriever. Now, we as parents interface with each of these in a very different way. And so that's where that intersection of personalities really plays out, and that's where you need to customize your parenting. Let's look real quickly at the 4 personality styles, okay? First of all, we have task-oriented. So you see the lions and the beavers are more about the task. They want to make sure the job gets done. Now, the lions can turn out to be more of a taskmaster, and the beavers, they're just steady, doing it right, and you hardly see them, but they're getting the job done. But they're all about task, and they fail in taking into account the relationship behind all this effort and these tasks. On the other hand, we have the relational side, which is the otter and the retrievers. Now, what separates the two is these guys are more extroverted, all right? Otters, obviously, they're out entertaining people in front of people. Lions are out there in front of people and like to, lead people. And then you have your introverts, which are your beavers and your golden retrievers, the one-on-one relationship. So these are all helpful to better understand and know your child. Now, let me ask you, of these 4, which one is the best personality? Why are you laughing? Because it's a silly question, isn't it? Because there isn't any best. There's just these personalities. And so what we need to do is not get into... Now, a lot of times, if I'm a lion, guess who I think is the best? The lion. Yeah, they're great. But we have to be careful about that, to impose our own personality on other people, because we think, well, what works for me should work for you. Well, not always, because we're very, very different. So here's some summary thoughts. First, since temperaments is genetic, you have to accept it and work with it. You're not going to change your child to be from a lion to an otter. It is what it is. The second one is, since each child is uniquely created, you want to value who they are. I remember when I would come home, when the kids were really young, I would come home, 2 of my kids would practically knock me down, okay? And it's like, hey, Daddy's home. And the other one was sitting in the corner. The other one was reading something, looked over the paper, like, oh, he's here, It's like, pfft. And I'm thinking, okay, well, you don't want your hug. You don't get your hug. But I thought about that. I go, no, they're different. And if I don't go to them and hug them, they're not going to feel loved. And so I had to show my, entry love in a different way for each child. And I remember also when my first lion came along, right? He was a tough nut. He had thick skin, and you could spank him and yell at him, and he goes, that's all you got? Bring it, And then my second one was a golden retriever. And you just look at her in a not a happy way, she starts to fall apart. I'm going, oh my gosh, I haven't even got out of my chair yet, and she's already crumbling. And so I had to just radically change my parenting style. And this also helps explain why, you see 4 kids, 2 are doing really good, and 2 aren't doing really good. And so what's that about? Same parents. Well, what often happens there is that the parents have one style of parenting, and it just happened to work on those 2, and it certainly didn't happen on the other 2 for failure of customizing their parenting. And if you work in the business world, if you're a manager, that's the same thing. Good managers know their people and customize their management style to their people if they want to get stuff done. Since children can push life out of balance, resist the urge to panic. Okay, and this is why it's nice to have a husband and wife, because sometimes Gloria had a defter feel and approach with our lion than I did. Sparks would fly oftentimes, and so she would step in and I'd step out. So you don't want to panic, but you want to look for alternative ways to manage and parent your child. Now, one other thing I want to leave you with, and this is kind of looking ahead, but from parents of teenagers, they get this a little bit, but you're moving in that direction. So here it is. And that is one of the most common complaints that parents have of teens, and sometimes even children, is the lack of appreciation. These kids don't appreciate anything, and they just don't know how good they have it, and et cetera, et cetera. So let me ask this question. What is the mother of appreciation? What's that? What's the mother of appreciation? What causes people to appreciate things? What made you appreciate what you have? Hardship. Would you agree? Hardship is the mother of appreciation. If you haven't had something for a while, you start to appreciate that. Now let me ask you this. What is the number one thing we parents want to spare our children? Exactly. And that's not a good combination. In fact, next week, Doug's going to come and talk about discipline. And discipline is all about discipling, right? Which is to teach. Punishment is to punish. But discipline is a whole different way of going at it, but sometimes it can be tough. And it creates hardship. And hardship is not a bad thing. In fact, absence of hardship leaves you without much appreciation. And you'll start to see that when your kids get to teenage years. Our kids grew up in a time where, when at the end of the soccer season, everybody gets a trophy because we don't want to have anybody have hurt feelings. And so everybody gets a trophy. So after a while, trophies, you don't have any appreciation for trophies. They're easy to get. Bottom line is that you need to customize your parenting. And that's not easy. It'd be nice just to cookie cutter do this thing. You have your style. It's easy to do. But really, it's loving your child in the way they need to be loved, which is the true sacrificial love. It's very easy to love people the way I like to be loved, or I want to love them. That's easy. But to love people the way they want to be loved, and particularly your children, that's a sacrifice because you have to learn about them. It takes time. It takes effort. And finally, you want to value the bent even when it's driving you crazy. And remember, which one is the best personality style? Yeah. It's not about good or bad, right or wrong. It's just different. And so we want to celebrate the difference in our children. Now, I want to just show you one thing I have available on my website that gets you a little deeper if you like. There's some handouts that you can download on specific temperaments for your lion, for your otter, for your beaver, for your golden retriever. And then there's this one here gives you some one-liners in terms of how to respond to each one of these that will value their difference. So you're welcome to go there to take a look at that.